It's Aaron, metal theologian. So sort of in the mood for shit that like isn't the heaviest kind of shit, like the heaviest kind of music. But you know, still sort of fits like broadly within that metal category. It's funny because this came up on Heavy Metallurgy. Hope y'all are subscribed. Last week we were talking about sort of, you know, subgenres and that sort of thing. And in a way it's all bullshit, but in a way the terms are useful too, you know what I mean? And that's kind of this perpetual sort of struggle that I have in trying to articulate this shit. Because on the one hand, I hate to just lean too much on like subgenre designations. It don't really mean anything, right? Like what's the difference between thrash metal and speed metal? You know, I'm not really convinced there is one. I know people talk about it, people debate it. I kind of think that everyone is just sort of hearing what they're hearing and the lines are arbitrary, right? But on the other hand, a term like stoner rock, even though I hate it and I think it's like sort of dismissive of the music and, you know, the what goes into creating that stuff, it's useful in that when someone's talking, when something is described as stoner rock, I know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? So if like the value of a term is its ability to express meaning, then it's a valuable term, even though I really don't care for it, you know? So, anyway, that's a hell of a prelude, I suppose. But, yeah. So, yeah, I just sort of for the hell of it, it's funny. There were a couple things I grabbed recently. I just happened to grab records by two different bands called Omega. And this is one of them, and I'm really enjoying this one. This is like, it's really not very heavy, right? And like, it'd be easy to sort of say this is sort of AOR-y or something like that, but it's really not. It's really more like sort of a hard rock record. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Winterhawk in a way, you know? It's probably less bluesy than Winterhawk. Not that Winterhawk is super bluesy, but in sort of tone, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like Winterhawk owes a little more to Thin Lizzy than these guys do, you know? How about that cover art, by the way, too? That's really kind of crap. I mean, I'm a sucker for just like a big logo on the cover. You know, like a cover like this, I can totally get down with, right? But this Omega one's really kind of crap. But I think I like the Omega record better than the Patriarch record, to tell you the truth, you know? I don't know, you know what Omega's kind of like? Omega's kind of like what I wish AOR sounded like. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really that heavy, but the songs are good. They have hooks, but the hooks aren't so obvious, like on a Foreigner record or something like that. And it's just an enjoyable listen, you know? I mean, it's about as tough as they look, you know? Kind of sounds like a band where two of the guys have glasses. But I've really been enjoying this one, you know? And, yeah, this is the other Omega. These guys are actually from the UK. Apparently, there's a band called Apocalypse that put out like 145. That's really rare, but not the greatest thing ever if you ask me. Not really worth the money it goes for, you know. There was a reissue on a 12-inch from Buried by Time and Dust a few years ago. I'd recommend grabbing that if you can find it. Anyway, I think my understanding is that these guys are sort of what that band morphed into. And this is really past the new wave of British heavy metal era. This is like, I want to say 85. Yeah, it says 85. One thing I like about this record is the singer doesn't really sound like... I think it's the same singer, too. But he doesn't sound as Art Garfunkel-ish as he does on the Apocalypse records. Like, he really sounds kind of like Art Garfunkel on those. One thing I don't like is the cover of Day Tripper. That they kind of rush through so it doesn't hang around forever. But it's still a fucking cover of Day Tripper, man. Which is like one of the last songs I need to hear. I mean, better than Eleanor Rigby or Come Together. But that's about the best I can say for a fucking cover of Day Tripper, man. This record, though, it's almost like, this feels like a prog record, you know? It's a hard rock record. It's heavier than this other Omega, too, by the way. This, I forgot to say when this one was, by the way. I think it was late 70s. Yeah, 79-ish. That's one of those Greek reissues, the Sonic Age ones. So, yeah, this one, it's almost like they set out to be prog, but they didn't really nail the songwriting and that sort of thing. What they did nail, though, is the feeling. You know? And it's an interesting record. I mean, I've been enjoying it. Like I said, I can do without that one cover, but again, they sort of rush through it. It's not bad. And none of the songs have really jumped out and grabbed me just yet on, you know, a couple of initial listens. But yeah, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get there. It's definitely an unusual kind of, I want to say sound. It's really an unusual feel for a record more than anything. You know what I mean? It's like they have ideas, and I like what they're doing with them. I just haven't completely digested it yet. Yeah. Actually, a couple other ones I pulled out of the stacks. Yeah, it's funny. Someone, I think it might have been Alan over at Let's Talk Metal on a Heavy Metallurgy again. But he was talking about some comp that had a song by VVSI on it. What a terrible name, right? And I was like, yeah, I think I have a record by them. So I pulled it out. And then I pulled out this one. I don't even know how you're supposed to pronounce this shit. Whatever that is. XX Aaron. Anyway, they're sort of connected in my head for some reason. So even though I thought this one was on New Renaissance too. The VVSI one was on New Renaissance. This one's an Earthshaker. Well, with this one, I was pleasantly surprised, actually, because I remember these two as being kind of similar, and this one was heavier than I remembered it being. Really a pretty decent metal record. Not great, you know, not really, you know, an earth shaker, as you might say, mostly because the songs just aren't really mind-blowing, you know, but it's, it kind of sounds German, as I'm pretty sure it is. It might be Swiss, actually. Fundamentally, though, it was a heavier record than I remembered it being. It was a pretty decent listen. If you find it cheap, it's totally worth it. I wouldn't pay an arm and a leg for it, though. This one, on the other hand, was really kind of a turd, man. I mean, it's not terrible, but, you know, most of these new Renaissance bands tend to be sort of on the thrashier, or even like, you know, maybe not death, but, you know, sort of on the heavier side. Not necessarily good, but heavier. This is almost like their foray into glam or something like that. And for a glam record, it's pretty heavy. But, you know, that's for a glam record. It's not cloying like a lot of glam records. It just isn't that great, you know what I mean? It's like, there's nothing to hate about this record. Like, you know, it rocks okay. It isn't, like, super, like, saccharine or super, you know, just embarrassing or anything like that. It's just kind of not that great. So, yeah, don't pay an arm and a leg for VVSI either. That's my advice. Don't get these records that suck. You know, the Omega one's good. So I've actually been listening to some 45s too, so that was kind of what I was going to do for the rest of this video. Just fucking show some 45s, because, I don't know. Some of these I've probably shown before, some I probably haven't. Yeah, so what are we going to start with here? Alright, so here's one. Let's start with this one. I kind of wanted to hype this because it's like one of my favorite, like, knuckle dragging anthems of this year. This is Nightfall Flyer. And this 45 is from, like, 79. I really like this Omega record. This Omega is one of those records that gets a little bit better every time I listen to it. Like, I didn't hate it the first time I listened to it, but I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of ordinary. And then I listened to it again, I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Now, like, third or fourth time, I'm going, you know, I'm really pretty much digging this record. Then I put it on again when I was starting this video, and I was like, fuck, man, this is really solid, you know? So anyway, this Nightfall Flyer 45 is has two songs, Out With A Vengeance and Heavy Metal Rules, and we're going to listen to Heavy Metal Rules. Because when it comes to, like, dumb riffs and, like, a really dumb chorus, it doesn't get any fucking better than this record, man. It's just glorious. And the fact that it sounds really primitive only adds to it, you know? Like, the playing isn't perfect either, you know? It sounds really live. I think this says something about being live in the studio or something too. I don't know. Yeah, look at that. They didn't bother to put their name on the cover. It's maybe not the smartest move, but what the hell? Works for me. How about that singer? It sounds so working class. That's not a trained singer, you know? Like, this could be cringe, but it's so good. It's just not. You've gotta love it. Yeah, generally speaking, if you come up to me and you say, hey man, you gotta hear the song, it's called Heavy Metal Rules, I'm gonna be like, yeah, that's probably not really gonna kick my ass. But this song just fucking blows me away, man. I fucking love it. It's so good. Yeah, what else have we had here lately? I pulled this one out by Golgotha. It's kind of funny. This is one of those I've been aware of since like 20 years ago when I first started collecting this shit. This thing turned up on lists kind of a lot. Probably because it's not that highly regarded. But it is kind of hard to find. The band's called Golgotha. And they're not as heavy as you would expect with a name like Golgotha, right? It's a good record. It's not a great record. It's 4 songs, so it's kind of long. You know, as 7-inch records go, it's a lot of bang for your buck, I suppose. It's just a little bit light, you know what I mean? There are no riffs like this on it, you know what I mean? There's no plotting, like that kind of sort of like Iron Man stomping around type of riffs, you know? Relatively light, but the songs aren't bad, you know? It's just not as heavy, you know? Here, there's another one that's been getting some play lately too by Megaton. I want to say Aluminum Lady, but it's Aluminium Lady because they're from Britain. Like the little sort of regional touch there. We're going to put this on for a minute because it's fucking fantastic. There's another one with a Bananas singer, you know. Alright, here we go with this one. On hot metal music. This is like 81 or something like that. Take a look in a sec. Has one of these homemade covers too. Like it has the lyrics to one of the songs in the back, but check this out. It's one of these homemade deals where they had this like cardboard thing in there and then had a wraparound sleeve they stuck on themselves. And the glue's kind of coming undone because it's old. I love how the singer's kind of like yelpy and kind of screamy. It's almost like he's just doing his own thing too. Like the band's playing the song and he's just sort of like yelling over it and screeching. It's not quite, if you listen to it, there's rhythm there. You know, it fits together. But man, the delivery is so loose. It's really unique. But it's pretty heavy for how early it is too, man. Like I said, I think it was 81. Yeah. What else do we have here? This is kind of a cool one too that I actually haven't had that long. This is Energy. It's one of these UK sleeves, by the way. It's only cut out on one side. I only have like, the only 45s I have with sleeves like this are NWOBHM 45s, right? Yeah, they're called Energy though. The A side is Nowhere to Hide, and the B side is Fight for Your Freedom. And Fight for Freedom has been on a couple of comps, you know. It's probably the more rockin' song of the two. Nowhere to Hide is almost like the Romantics is too strong, right? It's not as sort of, you know, mainstream sounding as the Romantics. Oh, the Romantics were pretty good for what they were, and, you know, Win, you know. But, like, definitely has some pretty obvious hooks, kind of an almost pop song kind of aspect to it. But, that doesn't really do it justice, you know what I mean? It's not the heaviest thing ever. It's a relatively inexpensive single, too, if you decide you want to go search it out. So, maybe worth checking out on that front. But, yeah, I don't know, man. I like it. It's kind of a fun one. I think the next one I'm going to play here, though, is going to be this Samson one. So the one I haven't had for that long. This is 78, this one. It's like everyone who gets into this stuff knows that Samson was around for a while, and the whole Bruce Dickinson connection and all that shit, right? But I didn't realize they actually had 45s out as early as the 70s until pretty recently. I think the first album was like 79 or 80 or something. So this predates even that. The weird green cover. And that unmistakable Samson logo, you know. It's pretty rockin' too. For 78, this already sounds like pretty, you know, it doesn't sound like metal circa 1985, you know, you're not going to confuse these guys with Possessed. But you're not going to confuse them with Journey either, you know? So here we go. Definitely a bit of a 70s sort of rock and roll vibe to it, you know? But the playing is really clearly like in the direction of metal, you know what I mean? This is like an acceleration relative to what was coming before it in the 70s, you know? Or maybe acceleration isn't the right word, except because I don't need so much speed as far as, you know, leveling up the intensity, you know? Some cool break in there. Yeah, this is another favorite. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this one before, but this is the Crier single. The song was just called The Single. Apparently they were supposed to have some sort of contest to like name the song or something, which is kind of dumb. And I don't really know how it shook out, and I kind of don't really care either. This is like 79 or 80, something like that. Talks about their lineup having been around since 78, but yeah, anyway, this one has kind of an obvious hook, but it's an awesome hook, man. On the song The Single. The B-side is a little bit less intense with Hesitate. But like, if you don't mind, you know, a little bit of again, without going full AOR or something like that. This is like, you know, if you take like sort of that Final Countdown aesthetic and the sort of the bombast of it, but like boil away all the commercialism and boil away all of like the production money, you know what I mean, and just have like a couple guys in the garage playing it, you probably get something sort of like The Single by Crier. So it's pretty good. Not a very heavy name either, is it? Crier. Kind of wimpy if you ask me, but it's pretty great. Yeah, speaking of wimpy names, this is kind of a misleading name. The Dick Smith Band. Sounds like a blues band or something, right? Yeah, there's no one in the band named Dick Smith, I'm happy to report. And I'm going to fire it up for a minute because I'll tell you something. I kind of couldn't believe how good these guys were. You know, this is the second coming of Marquis de Sade here, just to sort of manage our expectations. But the first time I heard these guys on a comp or something like that, or saw their name listed on a comp, I should say, I was not expecting the Dick Smith Band to be cool at all. you know? I was expecting them to be kind of lame. I'm going to play the B-side, Way of the World. There it is. The cover is actually reasonably heavy looking. You know? Logo looks kind of 70s. That's where that kind of a beat would really become cliche a little bit later in the 80s. You know, like 2 or 3 years after this record came out. But yeah, I guess the name's sort of like Leonard Skinner or something like that, where, I mean, I don't know where the hell they got it from, but it wasn't one of the band members. So don't hold that against them. Singer has a little bit of an AOR quality in his voice, doesn't he? A little bit of Lou Gramm. But not so much that it really spoils the song or anything, or like makes us evoke anything other than what it is, you know? Yeah, if all you listen to is shit like Bathory, then this probably isn't going to be heavy enough for you, so... Yeah, I love this record. It's pretty fantastic. So... So I think I sort of appreciate in these old bands more than I used to, or the way they use keys. And sometimes it just kind of doesn't really add too much, right? But like, especially since I got into Dawn Watcher. I might be the biggest Dawn Watcher fan on YouTube, come to think of it. But yeah, those sort of like primitive like synth sounds, these sorts of things are really cool. And one that I don't think I've talked about before that really kind of represents it is this band Challenger. I guess some copies of this had a sleeve, mine doesn't. But when the label's that cool, I can deal with it, you know? Fucking spooky guy. Looks kind of like a dork with a lightning bolt in front of him. Yeah, let's check out a little bit of Challenger. This is definitely kind of heavy on the keys. But, you know, not in like a synth pop kind of way. And not in the sort of way where it just sort of dominates and covers the whole thing and it just sounds like, you know, synthesizer shit. Yeah, there you go. So Sure of Yourself. As far as I know, this is their only single. Out to Kill is the B-side. Yeah, I don't have any kind of reissues or anything with this band either. I don't know if they ever did anything else or if they ever got compiled like some of these bands, you know. Definitely not the sort of, you know, batshit kind of keyboards like what you hear in Dawn Watcher, you know, in Salvador's Dream or something like that. But also not like sort of in the way, like the way they kind of feel on those White Spirit records. You know, where I feel like when they nail it, they really nail it, White Spirit. But when they don't, it kind of gets a little bit goofy, you know. Yeah, not the greatest band ever, but a lot of fun this one, you know. It's got a little oomph on the beat there. Really sort of forward drive to it. Yeah, here's another one I want to talk about too. fucking Toad the Wet Sprocket. I don't know what the fuck was up with English bands calling themselves Toad the Wet Sprocket, because as far as I know, there have been at least 3. There was that one that was like some sort of alternative band like in the early 90s. I don't give a shit about them. Then on the first Metal for Mothers record, there's a song called Blues in A, which is easily the worst song on that record. And that's credited to Toad the Wet Sprocket, which for a long time I thought was the same band as these guys, but apparently not. These guys apparently started out as like a punk band too. They made 2 records on Sprockets Records, and I think that's all they did while they were together. Although I'm pretty sure there's been a comp of these guys that's come out since. And yeah, I haven't heard the punk stuff. Honestly, I'm not really all that interested in it. Not because I think it would suck. I mean, it's probably good. It's just, you know, I don't really collect the punk. I leave that to people like, you know, Vinyl Richie and Eric Bauer over at High Defamation TV. Hope you subscribe to him too, man. So let's check out Reaching for the Sky, though, by Toad the Wet Sprocket here. This has another kind of amusing cover I'll show off in a sec. Let's get this going. So you got those, like, you know, almost like a precursor to like the little band collages that the thrash bands would do later in the 80s on their inner sleeves. But the way this folds out, like it opens up and there's like this pocket, and it's just like stapled on to an inner sleeve, right? You see that? So I sort of replace it. I mean, I just have it in there separately, and I put it in the sleeve to protect this bad boy, but there you go. You know who the singer reminds me of a little bit for some reason is Bill Fox from The Mice. If anyone's ever listened to his stuff. The Mice were power pop. So definitely a different vibe. And they weren't from the UK, they were from Cleveland. But a great band. And this guy doesn't really sound like Bill Fox, but there's something about his tone that reminds me of him. Curious if anyone else hears it, if the reference isn't too obscure. So again, like Toad the Wet Sprocket, it's like some funny shit they're doing, right? It's like, oh, here's our fucking Monty Python name or whatever it is, you know? But this pretty much rocks, man. If you're gonna sound like this, you can go ahead and call yourself something goofy, and I'll go along for the ride, you know? Yeah, what else do we have here? Maybe I'll show one more, because we're getting close to a half hour here. Yeah, this next one, this is one of many bands called Titan. And as far as I know, this is the only thing they did. East Wind, West Wind, and Losing the Fight. It was a pretty straight ahead metal record for its time. You know, again, it's not going to sound like 85 or 88. It's not going to sound like, you know, Forbidden or something like that. But this is just sort of the vibe that I've been in the mood for, you know. I like the heavy shit, you know. I like my satanic records. Sometimes I just want to hear a garage band playing some kind of normal stuff, just putting together a few riffs and, you know, delivering it with a punch. Kind of a dark tone to it, you know. Really simple riff, you know. The drummer's carrying a lot of the weight here. That sort of shuffle he's got going on in the drum pattern. This is like a really sort of classic NWOBHM sound here, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not mad at this at all. Alright, well there we go. That's two bands called Omega and some other odds and ends. This is sort of how shit goes. What do we listen to this week? Shit like this. Awesome. Alright, well, thanks for watching. Hope you got a couple laughs. And I'll see y'all next time. Always appreciate it.